So, y'all, I'm sitting out in Pleasant Hill, North Carolina. It's raining out this bitch. It's been raining hard as fuck all day. Um, I started the day off driving from Lewistown, Pennsylvania, down to Emporia. Now I'm sitting in Pleasant Hill. I gotta get this vehicle or this truck serviced in the morning. So I'm gonna be here for the rest of the goddamn night. It's some trash, but at least I get to talk to y'all. And I get to talk to y'all without the engine running or anything like that, because it ain't really that cold or hot neither way. So, I get to talk to y'all without the engine running so y'all can hear me clearly when we're going to be talking about bitch ass Bernie Sanders. Now, I said I was going to do Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden in the same video, but I'm going to do Joe Biden. I'm going to do him next. We're going to deal with his whole ass and how he's trying to campaign to black people. Right now, Bernie Sanders, though, is making promises to black people about marijuana. Now, we know that Bernie Sanders has come out and said that he does not have a black agenda. He has also been exposed for being a racist by black people that has worked on in his campaign or worked directly close to him. I made a video about a black woman who got on the Breakfast Club and told them that Bernie Sanders was an old racist motherfucker. He don't see race. He thinks everything is about class. And that's not absolutely true. Because if it was, then that means that rich people would automatically be good. But we know that rich people aren't automatically good if they're black. And there are certain glass ceilings that even the rich can't bust through because of racism and because of the entire system being built against black people. But race and class are real things. We speak about classism here as well, but they cannot be separated because the white people that are perpetuating the racism are also the ones in the highest class position as well. So you got to deal with both things. Bernie Sanders think motherfuckers are stupid. Now, he got him a dumb motherfucker in Killer Mike. I'll give him that. He found him I won't call Killer Mike dumb. I'll say that Killer Mike is, he doesn't fully understand the race situation if he is supporting Bernie Sanders without any criticism, because I have never heard Killer Mike come out here and criticize Bernie Sanders. He only supports everything Bernie Sanders does and everything Bernie Sanders says. So therefore, I don't fuck with Killer Mike at all because he's ignorant clearly. So I can't fuck with him, and he doesn't speak for me in any moment. But Bernie Sanders want to come out here and basically try to use weed legalization to appease black people. And black people are slow enough. We are ignorant enough to allow this to work on us. Now, I don't think this is going to work on older black people, but for young black people, this is a very, this is something that young black people will be all gung-ho for. I think it can appeal to a lot of young black voters this way because the kids are as ignorant as the parents, quite honestly. I'm going to read through this article on a promise that Bernie Sanders made. And, it's not real shit that's going on. Says here, Bernie Sanders wants to legalize pot on his first day in office. He said he's going to legalize on his first day. But could he actually do it? Let's get into it. Says here, this posted on the Boston Globe. Says U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders is making a bold promise. If elected president, he will legalize marijuana in all 50 states on his first day in office. Now, if you know anything about, state laws and even federal laws, a president cannot come in and just change a law on his first day, or hell, period, really. He can't just come in and change a law all willy-nilly. There's a such thing called checks and balances. So you would know upon hearing this that it sounds good. But the practicality of it actually being acted out is what the bullshit is. Quotes Bernie Sanders saying, "We will end the destructive war on drugs. the 2020 Democratic candidate said at a rally days before this week's Iowa caucus. And the Iowa caucus is something that's very important to these motherfuckers. They play a game like, whoever goes up in Iowa and does a good job has a really good chance of winning the presidency. We know all these things are trash. At least we should know. But in the political arena, the Iowa caucus is very important. And then what he should say is we will end the destructive war on black people. See, that would be what the real is. You see what I'm saying? Because some states have already legalized, at least on a state level. These are states that have a large white population. For example, Colorado has a large white population. It's one of the first states that did it. Nevada, there's another state that did it. And I think there are about 10 states totally. But if you notice where the largest concentration of black people is in the South, or in a state like New York, which I recently found out that New York has the highest black population in the USA. So you look at some of the ways they're oppressing those black people up there in New York with these laws. The gun laws is one that we kind of focus on, stop and frisk. These things are making more sense. When I learned that, I'm like, okay, well, I see why they be having all these anti-black laws. They're going to have them everywhere, but it makes more sense because New York has the largest black population in the nation, New York City. So, the fact that weed isn't legal there makes sense. The fact that you don't have any weed legal in states in the South, it makes sense because this is where black people are. So it's been legal for white folk anyway because white people aren't being policed and laws are only as strong as is the enforcement. So when they make laws, we must understand, even in this war on drugs, white folk doing heavy drugs always have had the best drugs. The best would be quality of drugs. The government's moving this shit in anyway. But, that's a whole other subject. But it's been, quote unquote, illegal, but it hasn't been enforced. White folk been running around here doing whatever the fuck they want to do because they're not as policed as black people. And that's the reality of the situation. But, of course, Bernie not really dealing with that part. He says here, on my first day in office, through executive order, we will legalize marijuana in every state in this country. An executive order cannot do that. If the laws have already been against it, we'll get into the ways as to why this can't happen. But if you know what an executive order is and you understand how executive orders work, executive orders cannot trump, for lack of a better word, trump the already states mandated laws. That's not how this shit works. I'll continue though. Says here, but while the pledge has been largely welcomed by reform advocates and cannabis enthusiasts, some experts question whether such immediate sweeping action is legally or practically achievable, as they should. Soon as I saw it, I said, oh no, he out here lying to black folk. And black people should know this shit. If you black, it is not as cut and dry. Nothing is cut and dry. But when we're dealing with laws and state laws, and particularly state laws, because if you notice, weed is not legal on a federal level. It's still classified as, I forget what type of controlled substance it's still classified as. But this shit involves a whole system. The whole system got to be okay with the legalization of weed, not just the president. I'll continue. The use of executive orders at the start of a presidency isn't unprecedented. President Obama signed one aimed at shutting down the controversial Guantanamo Bay prison the day after he assumed office, and President Trump issued an order scaling back Obamacare, for example. But there are unique challenges associated with a presidential move to unilaterally remove cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act. If this was a dictatorship, then he'd be fine. But Bernie Sanders out here promising something he can't do that simply. He'd have to put some work in here. We'll continue here. To effectively end marijuana prohibition through the executive branch, according to an analysis from the Brookings Institution, the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services or an outside party would have to file a petition which would then be reviewed by the Attorney General, who has usually delegated that responsibility to the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA. The Attorney General can also initiate the process on their own, requesting a scientific review directly to Health and Human Services Agency. Under HHS, the Food and Drug Administration would then assess the scientific, medical, and public health implications before submitting that review to the Department of Justice. Long story short, it's a goddamn process. And Bernie Sanders should be honest about the process that it is, as opposed to coming out here trying to galvanize voters to support him based on this statement. This man been in politics for a long time. He know damn well he not about to come out here and just legalize weed with no executive order. Come on now. In other words, changing marijuana's classification under federal law without an act of Congress is far more complicated than a single stroke of a presidential pen. You got to have your Congress behind you, too. You got to have Congress behind your ass. And how likely is it that Congress will agree to this? How likely is it that these states that are funded, or that a lot of these states that make a lot of money from these privatized prisons, how likely is it that they would do? Because this is the reason most black men are in prison right now, is nonviolent drug offenses. Marijuana being the one that's the most prevalent. How will they replace those prisoners? How would they replace those prisoners? What ways would they come about? They have to think about all of this, because that's what it comes down to. The new day one executive action proposal is far more ambitious. Is a far more ambitious plan than the one Sanders previously floated. Last year, the senator said he'd take a systematic approach to legalization that would involve naming cabinet members who will work to aggressively end the drug war and legalize marijuana within 100 days of his taking office. So the last time he ran, he had a similar idea, but it was less grandiose. It was more realistic. Even though I still don't feel like states are going to let the black prisoners go. They don't have much else on us but this weed. Because again, they've been letting white folk run amok out here the entire time. Now, we see and we understand, especially now, if you're looking at the states that weed is actually, or marijuana is actually legal in, you see the problems that black people who are trying to get into the growing or the weed industry are having. Black people are having issues because everything is fucking racist. Or everything is, geared to help those who already have capital. If you do any amount of research, you will see that black marijuana, that people are trying to open up dispensaries, are having issues because of, one, they're not able to get the capital because banks are not loaning to black people. That's been a metric or been a standard for white-owned banks historically. That's been a thing. And there isn't a conglomerate or anything like that set aside, or like a cash pot set aside for black business or black people who want to open up marijuana businesses. There ain't like there's just $50 billion set aside for these people to come, get loans through without the racism being attached to it to open up businesses, because they're having to wait to get licenses as well. And one of the rules to getting these licenses is that you have to own a property already. You have to have your storefront. And you have to be able to pay rent on that storefront all while you cannot sell the product. Ain't that something? These are the ways that, this racism will show itself, because you have to have that capital. And due to racism and the lack of giving black people reparations, we don't have that capital just in the bank. We don't have that capital already because you got to pay rent on a property while you wait. Process could take months to year. You have to be paying rent on that storefront property you have because you have to have that before you can even open or even apply for a marijuana business. And even if you do get investors, they're not going to fuck with you for that long while you wait on, being able to actually, get the license. They're not going to have time to wait on you like that. Investors ain't like that unless it's your daddy. Investors aren't like that. And then most investors are white. They don't really want to see you win anyway. So Bernie Sanders will have to come out here, to me anyway, for it to be anything, he has to come out here and, one, be real about the situation in totality. And y'all black people require that he be real about the situation. Because again, if you're going to vote for him, I mean, whatever. That's your, if you believe in this shit, that's fine. But you should be at least forcing him to be real and talk about this shit at every level. Even right now at the states where weed or marijuana is legal, black people are still dealing with racism due to being shut out because we lack the capital to hold on to a storefront, all while we can't sell the product. We gotta wait. That waiting game only benefits white folk who already have the capital, either A, already have the capital, or they have other white investors who are going to give them more leeway because they're white. That's the reality of it. So this marijuana legalization cannot be seen as something that's just going to come be a cure-all for black people, because you can just take a look at the states and where it's already legal, black people are still having issues due to racism and due to the condition of our people as far as wealth is concerned, as this country has perpetuated those issues, since the beginning. So Bernie would have to come out and be real about that. I would expect that would be Killer Mike if he's going to be supporting him. That should be something you're challenging him on. That should be something that you question. Like, this is a big conversation. This isn't a small conversation to have. Because he would also have to deal with the fact that these private prisons would have to replace their profit another way. That's a real thing. I've been trying to tell y'all. Now, while Bernie Sanders may say good things to y'all, he may sound, shit sounds good. Understand when you're being campaigned to. Black people in this political space who believe in this political space, understand when you're being campaigned to. Understand that. This is not real. Because he's not dealing with the fucking racism directly and head on. He's not dealing with that. He been scared. He been dodging reparations questions. Y'all seen this motherfucker. This motherfucker 78 years old. That bitch sure can't run when he hears something about reparations though, can't he? That motherfucker gets to be, he got them find that fountain of youth when he hear about reparations. Y'all just said? The motherfuckers can call me crazy if they want to. But I've been trying to tell y'all the whole time. Just ain't nobody listening. You got to call these motherfuckers out and stop letting them think that we're dumb. We have to show and prove that we're not dumb. You're not just going to come say you're going to legalize marijuana your first day and then get a standing ovation. No, I need to hear about this shit. Let me hear the plan. And you're not dealing with the racism. Look at the states that already have legalized marijuana and the black people who are still being blackballed out of the business. Unless you have the capital, unless you're a millionaire or something like that. But most black people, they're not millionaires. Don't got land to put up and all this stuff. Because y'all stole all of that. Or, this government gave the land to these white folk. You got to deal with the whole thing, man. All this shit is tied into racism. Capitalism is there. Or classism is there as well. But you got to tie all this shit in together. To impress me, anyway. That's why I'm not impressed with Bernie Sanders. And I know he's a fucking racist. So, I'm not impressed. But y'all comment if you feel the need to comment. Like, share, subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Links to follow me on social media in the description box. Shout out Team Rob. Y'all already know what the fuck it is. I'm out.